astronomic scale. And here, let's say that this town, Sarajevo, is as complex as Beirut. Here we have a wall hit by bullets and grenades, I suppose, during the siege of Sarajevo, who took place from 92 to 95. And on that sign, written in Muslim characters from the 15th century, and we have some hundreds signs like that in Sarajevo. It's written, in this place, the Serbian butchers on 7th of May 1995 killed 9 citizens of Sarajevo. Sarajevo, capital of Bosnia, is 10 kilometers far from Republika Srpska. That's the part of Bosnia under the Serbian culture. You go to Sarajevo and you find this sign. So in this case, the story, the war, is completely manifested in a very aggressive way. And now, let's move to design is always transversal in this presentation, but let's move to society. And I found this quote in one of the hardest books written in the 20th century by Céline, The Journey to the End of the Night, Le Voyage dans le but de la nuit, je pense en français. Objects have tears in them, silent and cold. They are the eyes of things that have served. Again, the idea that what we produce is not transcended, is not immortal, but it implies somehow its destruction. But from Bataille and from the Cursed Shell, La Palmodie, written again in 1949 after the Second World War, and taken from anthropology, here I would like to outline the notion of what is translated in English. It's weird sometimes to talk in English about I'm Italian and talking in English about French concepts that cannot be translated in any language. It's the notion of dépense, better. Dépense, what is this expenditure? Is the surplus, is generosity, is everything you do out of utilitarianism. Why dépense can be such a powerful notion? Because we are not producing no thought, no ideas, no objects, no renderings for no clients. With the dépense, we are simply donating to ourselves or to someone else our surplus of energy, our surplus of, let's say, power to create. And the notion of dépense is extremely important, and I teach it to my students because the day after they graduate, they will be part of a market, and they will be likely crafters of ideas, concepts made by someone else. underpaid crafters. The notion of dépense, the pure gift, is a way to escape this utilitarianism. And then I go to this bridge. Do you recognize it? I think not. But we are, do you? No? It's, sorry, we are all here due to, we all exist. I don't think that someone is in front of me was born before 1914, okay? Why? What is this bridge? We are all here because on this bridge, Gabriel Princip killed the Archduke Franz Ferdinand. And so the World War I started here. And if you go to, it's in Sarajevo, sorry, here again the language. If I say Sarajevo, is the Serbian pronunciation. If I say Sarajevo, is the Croatian and Bosnian pronunciation. Here, on this bridge, you think, okay, a monument, the 20th century has started here. No, you have a very small label here, you see it, telling simply, in this place, on the, I don't remember, 1914, Gabriel Princip killed the Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sofia. Stop. Okay? Basically, the 20th century, according to Osborne, was born here, and the sign is simply that one. Why that? Because Bosnia is a fake state created at the Dayton Agreement in 1995 by George Clinton, by Bill Clinton, Tudjman, President of Croatia, Milosevic, President of Serbia, and Izetbegovic, President of Bosnia. It's a fake, basically. Gabriel Princip is a hero for Serbians, fighting against the Austrian Empire, is a terrorist for Croatian, the one who killed the Archduke, and I don't know for Bosnian, okay? But anyway, I was shocked when, and I had to look for several references on Google Maps to find it. Okay, I'm moving to the conclusion. I have to go fast. Here, Hannah Arendt, The Human Condition, one of the books that should be on the shelves of every scholar of every university. Hannah Arendt, she defines human activities as labor. Labor in Latin is tiredness, necessity, work, and action. These different levels, these different ways of being are the ones each one of us in the field of culture is asked to interpret. When I work on Excel is labor, okay? When I define study plans is work. When I am here talking in front of you is performance, is action. And to contemporary human beings, the three levels are always required. Mostly if we live in the field of culture, if we live in the field of art and design. I go on, still in Croatia. This picture, Jasenovac, the third biggest concentration camp in Europe. Nobody knows that the third biggest was in Croatia. And we have, it's extremely curated. It's one of the most beautiful, let's say, harmonious places I ever been, where the deep of what's carried in the history of this place is so well documented. And we have this magnificent flower by concrete, 26 meter high. Why in Croatia, okay, they have such a, let's say, delicate way to tell the Holocaust? Because Ante Pavelic, during Second World War, with Ustasha, was side by side with Hitler. Tito decided to remove every historical residual of Pavelic and decided to build this monument. Why contemporary Croatia, okay, said it in such a perfect way? Because they have, I was telling you, each monument hide a secret and tell a lie. The secret hidden here was that Ante Pavelic was one of the best friends of Adolf Hitler. And so I cut this because I'm going long. Another monument, again in Croatian, and we are exactly at the opposite. It's like a spaceship, okay? And this monument is completely abandoned. You don't have even a sign in the woods in order to follow a street to arrive there. Why is completely abandoned, even though I can assure you, it's magnificent, because it was the monument dedicated to the socialist resistance, to the Croatian socialist resistance to Nazism. This part of the history associated with the idea of socialism and associated with the idea of Yugoslavia had to be cancelled, had to be removed. And so, last notion, one novel from Melville, Bartleby. Bartleby is the human being. It was written in 1853. Is the human being who says to every request he has only an answer. I would prefer not to. That's not a very proper English. It sounds very old as far as I know. And the novel is the story of this man, Bartleby, who replies always, I would not prefer to, till the moment he dies. And this is a kind of expression of his absolute freedom. Giorgio Agamben wrote a book, Potentialities, about this sentence, stating this thing, that it's fundamental to answer no. It's fundamental to stay in silence. It's fundamental to say no sometimes to the entire world in order to have a space in which we are pure potential without influences from the external world. A zone of complete autonomy. And I cut here penultimate picture. I was at the border between Serbia and Romania this year. You see, this is Decebalus. You know, that was the border of the Roman Empire, and Romans were always troubled to conquer Dacia, the contemporary Romania. And so that's a geographical limit called the Iron Gate that are the gorge of the Danube River for 80 kilometers. And you find this this story, help me, Michael, like the Mount Rushmore, which technique is like this one? It's sculpting. You see this sculpture. You can think that Dépense, 1,800 years ago, sculpted the face of one of their kings. No, it was made by a rich Romanian some dozens years ago in order to say to Serbians, this is our power, we have been able to face the Roman Empire. And so, here, I want to jump directly to the last postcard, to the last couple of postcards, Bucharest. Okay, here, this sign is written Policia Bucuresti, Police of Bucharest. It's in Cala Victoriei, it's the main street of Bucharest. It's a completely abandoned palace. And you know, Ceausescu was killed in 1989. After 36 years, you have a sign, ongoing work, something like that. And it was quite surprising to see that poster of a Netflix series, so contemporary, so connected to contemporary mass consumption, close to that powerful building. Why powerful? Because that building testified the horror of the Ceausescu years. And here are some references. I would like to go to this picture to conclude this presentation. I took it in Cambodia at Angkor. I was at the top of a temple of Angkor during the sunset. Angkor Wat is one of the most famous monuments in that part of the world. What was Angkor? Angkor was the capital town of the Khmer civilization. Angkor, 1,000 years ago, had around 1 million inhabitants. Now there is only jungle and magnificent ruins of temples. This to say that since we are dealing with time and perception this afternoon, time is a very, very strange beast. We have our human scale, and I underline our because nobody of us has chosen to born in a specific year, in a specific place. We have a human scale larger, we have the historical scale by which we comprehend that we have 1 million corpses or more under the jungle, and we have the astronomic scale. The invitation is to think time when we design according to all these scales, and also this sentence is attributed to several authors, but also to favor or to foster and protect life in whatever form it appears. Thank you very much.
Talk on Exactitude in Science, reading Borges in Beirut in 2025. With a degree in philosophy, an MA in communication, and a PhD in visual arts, media studies from the University of Plymouth, he has worked for over 20 years in the field of art and design education, holding positions in teaching, postgraduate course in disciplinary area direction and program development. Since September 2022, Dr. Bianchi has been academic coordinator at Plena Education and academic director of SPD Scuola Politecnica di Design. Since May 2025, academic director of the Milan campus of RUFA, Rome University of Fine Arts. Previously a lecturer in aesthetics of new media, and film history. Since October 2024, Dr. Bianchi has been teaching film history at the Rome University of Fine Arts. So, thank you, Dr. Bianchi.
Welcome, thank you for being here after this wondrous buffet. So I was introduced, maybe I had to shorten a bit my resume because it's definitely longer than my experience. But anyway, let's start. I don't want to bore you, since after that you're going to listen to me again, since we will have a roundtable in a row. Actually, so let me find the timer on this infernal object. Okay, let's start. When I thank Alba, I thank Janine Akla, I thank Michel Brady, I thank the institution and Samira and with design in Beirut for inviting me. Let me say that when I arrived here in Beirut, I considered this presentation was outdated compared to the reality I was seeing at. But at the same time I thought, okay, maybe it can be meaningful somehow. Which is the perspective I am adopting. I'm not a designer, I'm not a theologian of design. Basically, I'm grounded in philosophy. And what I will try to do is to exploit some concepts coming from philosophy, and that, in my opinion, coming from my experience and the fact that I graduated in my life at some thousands of students, coming from my experience to, let's say, outline some notions that can be helpful for current design students. And I decided to start, the clicker this way. Sorry. Okay, it was simply off technology, thank you. I decided to start with a very, very short novel by Jorge Luis Borges, the very famous Argentinian writer. And it's this one. This is the English edition of the novel, and this is the French edition. Okay, let's stay on this one. Borges wrote this short and haunting, let me say, novel on exactitude in science in 1946. I will never say that Borges is quite an optimistic writer, okay? It's not the kind of novel you would read during a party, but the moment is very, very peculiar. 1946, basically after Auschwitz and after Hiroshima. And what Borges is saying here is basically that after what happened during the Second World War, there was the impossibility to draft a map covering all the territory. In other ways, to have such a full knowledge that the world, the reality could be explained and exhausted. And so this novel is a story of some cartographers who were able to draft this map covering the entire territory, but then the map became ruined and it was habité par des animaux et des mendiants. So what Borges is saying is that in 1946 our current condition can be only the one of animals and mendiants, of animals and beggars. And so that's my starting point. Why that? Why so pessimistic? Why to start from that? Because I talk about philosophy in the sense of Western philosophy, so it will be always metonymic. If we have a narration to start, I would start in 1638, when a French philosopher, René Descartes, wrote a very short book, The Discourse on the Method. And that book, so well written, became so influential in the world to create what is the so-called modern era of the Western civilization. And what's the main point in Descartes? The main point is the pretty famous sentence, I think, therefore I am. I think in the sense that a human being is defined as a human being in the moment he is a reasonable man, a reasonable human being. And so we saw the explosion of reason in the following centuries. Great medicine, social sciences, happiness spread all over the world, richness of people, and so on and so on and so on, till Second World War, when reason served to the greatest extermination happened during the world. Auschwitz was carefully planned. Hiroshima, I think we have all seen that quite awful movie that's Oppenheimer, except maybe the first half. Anyway, let's start from here. So what are these ruins? What are these part of the maps we can browse? I will try in 10 notions and 10 pictures to describe it and try to understand how the ruins of the map can be useful for a designer. I will start with a quote from Michel Foucault, who wrote in 1969 The Archaeology of Knowledge, and I'm reading it. History is not a continuous flow, but a discontinuous multiplicity of times, of possible epistemes, each of which determines the condition of what can appear, speak, or be known. This definition by Foucault, so-called French post-structuralism, states basically one thing, that knowledge is always historical and knowledge is always fragmented. So the words we are using here in 2025 are part of a larger set of notions that Foucault calls in this book episteme, in some other books formative discourse, in some other books apparatus, by which all the things are somehow interconnected because we think according to a system, and this system, Foucault demonstrated it during the 60s, is definitely historical. And so, when we deal with history, we have to consider history as a non-linear succession of different epistemes. In a previous workshop, they were talking about trends. Trends is the brand wording of the notion of episteme. And for design students, it's the reason why listening to music, watching movies and so on, it's a way to a better understanding of the world, because design is not an activity separated from the world that we live in. It's completely at many levels, language, psychology, the way we talk, and everything is absolutely connected to the entire, let's say, culture we live in. I don't know if we have designers here, but when we study economics, I think we have a description of a human body derived by the Western anatomy and not by a chakra or some Buddhist theory. That's the idea of episteme from Foucault. And so, in this case, just to point out 3 points. Let's accept that we don't have any kind of transcendence, we don't have any kind of determinism in history. But time, or historical time, is based on fractures. I am from Milan. A colleague, Michael, was telling me, I don't understand Milan. Why I don't understand? And why I don't understand Milan? Because Milan was invaded in more or less 2000 years by 18 different populations. And so you have many different layers, even in a town like the one I'm coming from. And the history proceeds with fractures. Second point, when a designer operates, I would say that the keyword, it materializes a regime of visibility, where materializing and visibility are the keywords. I don't want to say that we have a kind of a zeitgeist like in Hegel. I would say simply that you are operating in the current time. You have some escape strategies from this current time, but anyway, starting from the language you talk, you are anyway conditioned and you are materializing something that's already surrounding you. And the third point, let me say, ruins. I would like to talk during the panel of the definition of ruin and the definition of wreck from the Mabelius Camilla Moon presentation. But ruins, in this case, are not failure. Ruins, in this case, are what remains after the collapse of reason during the 20th century. After the moment in which historically the West thought, let's say, end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th, that everything was done, the future was given, okay? After that moment, after the collapse of reason, now what we can do, we can design our ruins. And I have inserted randomly some pictures I've taken in the last year, just to, let's say, reinforce this presentation. Here I was in August 2024 in Tashkent, capital of Uzbekistan. And this monument is about Timur, Tamerlano. Is Timur understandable? Okay, great. So, when I was taught history in Italy, Timur was one of the greatest butchers of history, killing at least 20 million people. In Uzbekistan, Timur is the national hero because he built Samarkand. First he destroyed, then he rebuilt Samarkand, and so on. And so monuments, let me say, at the same time they hide a story, they hide a secret, and they tell a lie. They are the materialization of a specific power, of a specific historical moment associated to a specific power, in order to build what? In order to build what a contemporary philosophy and psychiatrist, Slavoj Žižek, would call an ideology. What is an ideology? It is part of that part of reality that allows us to coexist. So when Uzbekistan was born after the end of the Soviet Union, Timor was the lie by which Uzbekistan was unified. Second notion, let's go ahead. In any given culture and at any given moment, there is always only one episteme that defines the conditions of possibility of knowledge. Being here, this is very, very Western. Being here in Beirut, what has, let's say, what was overwhelming me is that in order to understand the city, to codify it, one episteme was not enough. That's the reason why some parts of this presentation, I feel they are outdated. I think that here we have several epistemes, several discourses, not overlapped, but let's say that appears in a quite quantistic way, according to the gaze of a viewer. And so, from this sentence, design is nevertheless a discursive practice. You cannot work out an episteme. There's not any kind of possible total free liberation. The total liberation is called in psychology schizophrenia, when we are completely disconnected from the principle of reality. And so we do operate under a regime of power and knowledge, always. Even in the moment in which we dismantle, let's say, in order to practice our freedom, we dismantle one discursive practice, we are nevertheless going into a discursive practice. Or maybe we can be so powerful to create a new discursive practice. Let's think, for instance, of Marcel Duchamp. Marcel Duchamp, who brought concepts into art in 1916, and he created by that gesture a completely new discourse. But anyway, Marcel Duchamp, doing that, he became, anyway, let's say, a lord of reality, the lord of the reality he created. So the point is that we never escape power. Any form of liberation is impossible. And so, it's the boundaries. About the boundaries, I have a metaphor. One of the most famous Italian designers of the 20th century is Ettore Sottsass. Sottsass, during a conference, was defined by a French scholar in this way. Here we have a circle. This circle is society. At the middle of the circle we have the manager. The role of the manager is to make society work as it is, to function properly. Out of the border we have the terrorist. The terrorist is the one who wants to destroy the circle of society. Ettore Sottsass was defined as a liminal man, a person who was able to have a feet a foot out of society and a foot into society. So who is the contemporary designer operating the ruins? Is this liminal man who has to live into society, but at the same time should try to keep a foot out of the society. And let's go ahead. Another picture, again from Tashkent. This is Hotel Uzbekistan, a great example of Soviet architecture. Tashkent was completely destroyed by an earthquake in 1966, and they completely rebuilt the town. It's wonderful. And this building was called from the beginning Hotel Uzbekistan. You may think, why Hotel Uzbekistan, something so nationalist under the Soviet Union? Again, ideology. Which one? Lenin. Lenin stated at the beginning of the Soviet Union the importance of each population. And so we have, instead of Hotel, I don't know, USSR or whatever, Hotel SSSR, better, in Russian, we have Hotel Uzbekistan. So history, in this case, was clearly manifested. Let's move ahead. The role of chaos. What is the definition of chaos? We have several ones, but the one I would like to apply here is that a very small fluctuation at the beginning of a process can create very different outputs at the end of a process, the famous butterfly effect. And why chaos is relevant? Because somehow we always live in a chaotic world. Before coming here, I didn't suppose at all what was the final outcome of my first visit of Lebanon. I met ambassadors, I met designers, I met new people, I met colleagues from Italy, and so on. Was that planned or determined in any way? It was determined by the absolute positive chaos I found here, meaning the fact that from small encounters, maybe in the next year we will build a strong relationship. Who knows? And chaos is something that everyone, every designer should embrace, because at the end of the day, it can be the ability to transform turbulence into form, failure into emergence. The notion of emergence is extremely important. Emergence is from basically from Nietzsche. Nietzsche and Ben Foucault, with a short essay, Nietzsche, the Philosophy and the Genealogy, 1971. The point is that Jean-Jacques Rousseau, when he stated the private property began when a person said, this land is mine, is false. The real primary scene is two persons, in the middle an empty ground, two persons fighting, one winning, and the one who is the winner says, this land is mine. Why to say that? Because sometimes in retracing time, in retracing history, we try to find the root of something. The reality is that basically there are no roots. Okay? I'm coming from the north of Italy. What is my ground? The the Roman Empire, no, my blood is definitely Celtic, I'm not Roman. And who are Celtic are coming from Indo-European, so that people from Mongolia should revendicate now that Milan is possession of them. That's the issue of root, and to legitimate the birth of something. As designer, okay, you can have the role, a conflictual role, conflict with institution, conflict with politics, conflict with economics, conflict with basically the society surrounding you, to bring light from an emergence to something. And to go ahead, I cut this one, and I go directly to this poster. Again, Uzbekistan. This was a poster of a hotel. It was in Bukhara. Bukhara is one of the towns of the Silk Road, marvelous towns, full of mosques, madrasas. And these architects, there are no 5-star hotels. That's a very good accommodation, no 5-star hotel. In the moment they wanted to build the first 5-star hotel in Bukhara, what they did, this trashy imitation of Bukhara architecture. In order to make Bukhara, that's quite a challenging town, it's extremely hot, it's dusty, it's at the border of the desert, to make it suitable for Western tourists. And in order to provide them the kind of international style of accommodation, of hospitality, but imitating trashy. The definition I use of trash is bad imitation, basically. This trashy architecture. Another point, movement. We all remember the period of the COVID, of the coronavirus. We were stuck in our homes in front of our screens. We were forced to sit 10 hours a day in front of a laptop to work. At least it was my experience at the time, but I think yours as well. And I was working in another institution, and at the end of the COVID, we were asking ourselves, should we go on with online classes? Why that? It was a private institution, because with online classes you can put 500 students in front of a computer, and so that's a reduction of costs. That's amazing compared to a standard 24 seats class. And the answer was absolutely not. Why not? Here, from Edmund Husserl, every lived experience is constituted in the flow of time, and consciousness is itself a movement, not a point. There's a quite famous sentence from the Goethe's Faust. I'm translating from Italian, it will be horrible. Stop, moment, you are beautiful. It's an impossible condition, okay? There's not any kind of possibility. Maybe in the virtual world, okay, it can be created. And we have a good movie, Strange Days, by Catherine Bigelow, talking about it. But we cannot stop the moment. We are who we are for the fact that we move. And time and movement are basically the two sides of the same coin. Without movement, we wouldn't have time. And so movement is one of the most important activities a human being is required to do to be not itself. There's no self to be discovered, but to construct themselves. And so I cut here and I go to this slide. Now we are going to the Balkans. Okay, concepts and slides are not connected. Have you ever been in Zagreb, capital town of Croatia? Zagreb is more or less 400 kilometers far from Belgrade. Okay. This sign is in Zagreb. Do you see the word Belgrade on this sign? Absolutely not. The war ended, the war between Serbia and Croatia in 1996. Let's say that the final ending Kosovo is 1999. Still, nowadays, in 2024, if you are in Zagreb and you want to go to Belgrade, you have to follow Slavonski Road. That's the last town in Croatian before the Serbian border. So this is a case of strong and extremely powerful removal. And this is Zagreb, but I will be back several times in the Balkans. Another notion, post-humanity and virtuality. Here I quoted from Donna Haraway, Cyborg Manifesto. She's still working on this notion, who was maybe the first one who really theorized the fusion between human and machine. But what is basically post-humanism? It's an approach that the 20th century, and still nowadays, is very, very alive. Again, Michel Foucault in 1966 wrote that posthumanism is the end of the era started with Descartes, with the cogito ergo sum, the think therefore I am, in order to open a new description of the human being. Posthumanism can be declined in many several ways. But basically, the operating notion of posthumanism I would like to exploit is the one that roots the birth of a contemporary human being, not in Descartes, but in the Neolithic era, more or less 10,000 years ago, in which conflict became the mean of resolution, war became the mean of resolution of conflict. The hierarchy between male and female was created. The birth of the contemporary notion of nature. Nature as something that is distinguished and otherness compared to the human. And still I'm shocked that more 150 years after Charles Darwin, we are still using the word nature. It should disappear. It has not any kind of sense. We are nature, basically. And the idea of nature, and Descartes again ruined definitely the Western civilization about it. When in another book he defined res cogitans, the human being who is able to think, and res extensa, the rest of the world, okay, he created another hierarchy. And so what is posthuman? And fourth, there's no distinction between human beings, living beings, and not living beings. And so posthumanism is the demolition of this. No more differentiation due to sex. No more war as way of a resolution of conflict. No more distinction with nature. No more division between human beings, not human beings, and other living beings. And so, in this case, the designer can embrace the world in a different way. In Milan, in my institution, we could decide to work in many different ways. I don't know, to approach an international brand and design the new perfect room for a great hospitality chain. No, we decided this academic year that the main project was to build a dog shelter. That's the point. The point is to find a way to cooperate and to live in the world in a different way. I'm a follower of the notion of dark ecology by Tim Morton. Yesterday someone was quoting the 2030 agenda. It's already dead, we know it, we must admit it. Of the 17th objective, of the 17th goals in 2030, maybe no one of them will be reached in any way. As Mark Twain was saying, of good intentions, the streets of hell are paved. And the Agenda 2040 is exactly that. What is the dark ecology? Simply, let's accept that we, the human beings, the most terrible living beings ever existed on this planet, we have already destroyed the world, planet Earth. Okay? Let's find a way to cooperate, okay, to build new communities into this destruction. And here I am in Belgrade. What's that? I don't know if you remember, but it was a quite famous fact. Belgrade was bombed in 1998 or 99, I suppose 98, by the NATO. NATO is Italian? No. NATO, thank you, by NATO. Okay. And this was one of the buildings of the Yugoslavian television, and 16 journalists were killed by NATO. This picture was taken in 2024. After 25 years, they haven't decided yet what to do with this building. Why that? Because Serbia, on one side, is there's a quite nice monument with the list of the dead people, but on one side, Serbia is looking west. Wants to be part of a European community, but on the other side, Serbia is looking east and is looking for historical reason Russia. So this facade is in this way, and it's a good shelter for thousands of pigeons. Because, why? Because there's not a dominant ideology right now in Serbia allowing this building to become a monument. It's not unifying nobody. And so, associated to the notion of chaos, but extremely different from that, is entropy. And I quoted Boltzmann, he committed suicide because even though he wrote the second law of thermodynamics, because nobody understood him at the time. Boltzmann was able to see that object and to understand that within this object there was movement, basically. And the second quote is from one of the writers I love most, Philip Dick. Philip Dick may be the greatest science fiction writer ever, who coined the terms Kipple. Dick didn't believe in anything except entropy. Entropy is one of the hard sciences laws. What does entropy say? It says that, and all the science agrees, and if we have to believe in something, we should believe in entropy, says that we have a certain end of the world, the big crunch. And the big crunch is the complete dissolution of every form in a unique temperature of the entire universe, so that information and energy will disappear because we will have only sameness. And so what is the Kipple? The Kipple is this wonderful idea in Dick that Dick novels are full of dust. They are full of pollution. Think about Andrew's Dream of Electric Sheep, Blade Runner, basically. The movie is Blade Runner. It's full of radiation pollution from atomic bombs. Kipple is the tangible presence, being it dust or pollution, that the destiny of the world is basically dissolution. And so Kipple, okay, here, why the notion of entropy? By the notion that the fact we are going to dissolution means designing not against time but with time. It's basically accepting that everything we create, even this room, this microphone, this telephone, will become dust at a certain point. And so we can think a time of the production of objects, of the life of objects, in which, again, posthumanism, we are no longer into the human scale, but we are